In 1400, Paris was a fortified medieval capital clustered around the Seine. The Isle de la Cite held the royal palace, Notre-Dame, courts, and religious authority. The right bank pulsed with markets, workshops, warehouses, and merchants, while the left bank belonged to scholars, monasteries, and the University of Paris. Stone bridges linked these districts above water, crowded with barges unloading grain, wine, and timber. The walls of Charles V enclosed growing neighborhoods. Yet fields and villages began close beyond the gates. Narrow streets were dark beneath leaning timber houses. Animals crossed public spaces, waste entered open channels, and epidemics could empty entire quarters. France remained trapped in the 100 Years' War. Paris became a prize claimed by rival factions. Burgundian forces controlled the city. English troops later entered it. And Henry VI was crowned King of France at Notre-Dame in 1431. But war, taxation, and hunger exhausted residents in 1436. Forces supporting Charles VII recovered the capital. Commerce revived. Printing arrived later in the century. And Paris moved toward royal centralization during the 16th century. Renaissance ideas entered Paris through books, architecture, art, and patronage. Francis I transformed the Louvre from a fortress into a palace suited to monarchy. Builders introduced classical forms, printers filled the Latin Quarter with texts, and the court promoted French culture, yet beauty developed beside religious division. Protestant reform gained followers, Catholic resistance hardened, and the capital became a theater of suspicion in August 1572. The St. Bartholomew's Day massacre began in Paris and spread through France. Turning streets into sites of sectarian killing, the wars of religion weakened the monarchy until Henry of Navarre converted to Catholicism. Entered Paris in 1594 and ruled as Henry IV. His reign restored order and launched reforms. The Pont Neuf crossed the Seine without houses blocking its views. The Place Royale created an elegant planned square. Later known as the Place des Vosges, Henry was assassinated in 1610. But the Bourbons continued shaping the capital. Aristocratic residences rose across the Marais, and the French Academy was founded. Giving language an official guardian under Louis XIV, Paris became the grand stage of absolute monarchy, even after the king shifted his court to Versailles. Monumental squares, domes, gardens, gates, and hospitals announced state power. The Louvre expanded, the Invalides served veterans, and royal academies organized art, science, and music. Meanwhile, ordinary Paris remained crowded, noisy, smoky, and unequal. Street sellers called through dense neighborhoods, coaches struggled through traffic, and the poor survived close to palaces displaying immense wealth. Intellectual life gathered in salons, cafes, theaters, and publishing houses, creating the conditions for the Enlightenment. Writers questioned privilege, authority, religion, punishment, and social order. By the late 18th century, financial crisis and food shortages sharpened anger. On July 14, 1789, crowds seized the Bastille, turning a royal prison into the symbol of revolution. Demonstrators marched to Versailles. The royal family was brought to Paris. Assemblies debated the future. In clubs, newspapers, and rumors accelerated events. Monarchy fell. Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette were executed. And during the Terror, the guillotine worked beneath the language of liberty. The city overthrew an old order, but learned how rapidly hope could become fear. Napoleon Bonaparte inherited this revolutionary capital and reshaped it for empire. Triumphal arches, bridges, fountains, markets, monuments, and ceremonial routes linked military glory to the urban landscape. The Arc de Triomphe was begun. The Louvre gained conquered artworks, and administration became centralized. After Napoleon's defeat, Paris passed through restoration, rebellion, and changing regimes. The revolutions of 1830 and 1848 filled streets with barricades and confirmed that the capital could determine France's political direction. Population growth made the old city congested and unhealthy. Cholera exposed the cost of poor sanitation, while railway stations brought passengers to districts never designed for modern movement. In 1853, Napoleon III appointed Georgia's Eugene Haussmann to rebuild Paris on a vast scale. Medieval neighborhoods were cut apart by broad boulevards. Uniform stone facades formed long perspectives. Sewers and water systems expanded, parks appeared. Terminals gained improved approaches, and public buildings anchored avenues. The transformation introduced light, circulation, hygiene, and visual unity, but displaced poorer residents, erased historic streets, encouraged speculation, and gave troops easier access to rebellious districts. Modern Paris emerged through engineering and destruction by the late 19th century. The reconstructed capital became the showcase of the Belle Époque. Cafes spilled onto boulevards, department stores turned shopping into spectacle. Electric lighting extended nightlife, and artists searched for modern subjects in stations. Theaters, dance halls, parks, and crowded streets. Impressionist painters captured movement in changing light, while Montmartre attracted performers, laborers, radicals, and outsiders. The Paris Commune of 1871 had left a violent scar following defeat in war with Prussia. Revolutionaries governed the city briefly before government forces retook it during the Bloody Week. Thousands died, buildings burned, and the Basilica of Sacré-Cœur later rose above Montmartre within the politics of memory. International exhibitions displayed machines, colonial possessions, consumer goods, and prestige. For the Exposition of 1889, the Eiffel Tower climbed above Paris as a temporary iron experiment. Criticized by some artists but embraced as a symbol of technological daring. The metro opened in 1900. Art Nouveau entrances carried passengers below streets. Cinema audiences watched moving images, and the capital drew painters, musicians, writers, inventors, and political exiles. Beneath this energy remained overcrowded housing and sharp divisions between prosperous western districts and working communities in the east. The 20th century tested Paris through war, occupation, liberation, protest, and reinvention during the First World War. The city endured shortages, bombardment, wounded soldiers, grief, and fear of German advance between the wars. Paris became a magnet for artists, intellectuals, African American performers, Russian emigrants, anti-colonial activists, and writers of the lost generation. Modernism flourished in studios, cafes, galleries, fashion houses, and cinemas. In June 1940, German forces entered the capital. Swastikas hung from public buildings. Restrictions shaped daily life. Jewish residents were persecuted, arrested, deported, and murdered, while resistance networks operated under constant danger. In August 1944, strikes and insurrection spread. Hundreds of barricades appeared. French and Allied forces entered the city, and crowds celebrated liberation. Post-war Paris faced housing shortages, suburbs expanded, towers and expressways altered the metropolitan edge, and migration from former colonies transformed culture. In May 1968, students occupied universities. Workers launched massive strikes, barricades returned to the Latin Quarter, and demands for freedom challenged social hierarchy, authority, education, and work, although the government survived. The uprising changed the language of French public life. From the 1970s into the early 21st century, Paris balanced preservation with bold intervention. The Centre Pompidou exposed its structure in industrial forms. The abandoned Orsay station became a museum. The Louvre gained its glass pyramid, and the Grande Arch extended the historic axis toward La Défense. Industrial districts became cultural spaces, abandoned rail lines became gardens, and the Seine's banks were reclaimed for pedestrians. Tourism strengthened the global image of romance and refinement, while residents confronted expensive housing, segregation, pollution, unemployment, and unequal opportunity. Terrorist attacks in 2015 struck Charlie Hebdo. Public streets, cafes, the Bataclan, and the Stade de France area, bringing grief and heightened security. In April 2019, Fire consumed the roof and spire of Notre-Dame. Parisians watched from bridges as one of the city's defining monuments burned. Craftsmen, engineers, and conservators then began an immense restoration. The coronavirus pandemic emptied boulevards, museums, restaurants, and metro stations, revealing how much Paris depended on gathering. The 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games turned monuments into sporting stages. While Notre Dame reopened in December 2024 after 5 years of reconstruction, by 2026, Paris contains about 2 million residents within the official city and belongs to an Île-de-France region of more than 12 million. The historic center remains recognizable, yet the living metropolis extends beyond the ring road into suburbs connected by rail. Work, migration, memory, and daily movement. Bicycles share avenues once dominated by cars. New transit projects seek to connect outer communities. Climate planning changes streets and schoolyards. And debates over affordability, tourism, security, inequality, and identity shape the future along the Seine. The medieval cathedral, royal palace, revolutionary squares, iron tower, modern museums, and public spaces form a visible timeline. Every structure carries evidence of a different ambition: sacred authority, monarchy, empire, republican citizenship, industrial progress, artistic freedom, or global prestige. An artificial intelligence reconstruction can restore vanished walls. Crowded bridges, Renaissance courtyards, revolutionary barricades. Haussmannian construction sites, Belle Époque cafes, occupied avenues, student protests, and the rebuilding of Notre Dame. But the deeper transformation belongs to the people who repeatedly claimed Paris as their own. From the enclosed capital of 1400 to the global city of 2026, Paris survived invasion, massacre, revolution, demolition, war, fire, and social conflict. Not by remaining unchanged, but by turning every rupture into another layer of its extraordinary urban identity.